Thanks for checking out this video, and this is the big one I've been looking forward to. My top, in this case, 15 horror films of 2022. Last year in 2021, I saw all these people putting out their top 10 videos, and I was like, I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like that would be a lot of fun to do, so I really hustled at the end of 2022. I shouldn't have waited so long, and I'm able to do this, and I have seen a good, very good amount of the 2022 releases. I would have done this video a little bit earlier and had it closer to July 1st, except that I needed to see the menu, and I'm very glad I did because it is on my top 15 list. And it just hit HBO Max yesterday when I'm doing this video, so did watch that. And I will have a review of the menu coming this weekend after I drop this video, so you can hear more about it there, even though it's no spoilers. So 15, I thought about doing 20, but I was like, this is just a little too much. Now, the other thing to consider, a few things about this. One, disclaimer, these are my opinions. These are the ones that I think were the best. Would love to hear yours. Go ahead and put in the comments. What are your top 10, 5, 3, 20, whatever you want to do. Totally good with me. The other thing is I considered films that came out technically were like finished in another year, but got released for more people to see this year. A lot of those being like international titles that, you know, they came out in the other country first and then they finally were available in the United States this year. So I did consider those. So you will see some of those or hear me tell you some of those are actually on the list. The other thing is this. I did not consider documentaries because if I had considered documentaries, I will tell you right up front, This Is Gwar would have been my number one film on this list. 100%. Because that was a phenomenal film, amazingly done, but it's not actually horror. It just was on Shudder and had like, you know, there's a little bit of horror. There's horror that gets baked into Gwar. But if I was including documentaries, especially that documentary, it would have been my number one film. Just telling you right now. So anyway, let's get into my top 15 horror films of 2022. Number 15, Watcher. This one, people were kind of split on. Some people were like, the ending's not great, and I agree. Like, I didn't love the ending. It's basically about a woman who's living in another country. She feels very isolated, and she's basically being kind of like, getting the feeling she's being stalked by someone. And there's kind of this thing at play where it's like, is she actually being stalked, or is she just feeling really isolated and alienated? And the atmosphere is phenomenal in this film. They do a wonder. Chloe Okuno does an amazing job creating atmosphere, making it stay very, very tense. You feel what this character is feeling, and it is just, it looks visually very good. Yeah, I didn't think the ending was as good as it could have been, but I still didn't have a big problem with the ending. It's a phenomenal film. It looks wonderful. It's a really fun time. So, number 15 was Watcher. Now, my number 14 slot is the Alex Garland filmed Men. This film, I wanted to like it more, but I still obviously quite liked it because it was my number 14 on this list. But that one is very interesting. It's very deep in what's going on. It's one of those films that can get extremely confusing. It's about a woman who has a traumatic thing happen in her life. She goes to get away and kind of spend some time with herself. And then there's, you may see my cat poking up. She might walk over, I don't know, but sometimes she wants to be in the videos. But anyway, she gets away and she's isolated, but then this man keeps showing up. And she's kind of ends up seeing this man like everywhere she goes. And it's about these interactions she's having with these people and these situations she ends up in. So it's a very interesting film. It is very meta, to use a word that Joe Bob Briggs hates. It's a very meta film, and it has a very interesting thematic aspect to it, and what the subtext is very interesting. Extremely well shot, as it's Alex Garland. That's what Alex Garland does. Also, Alex Garland does weird, and this film is weird, but I really liked it. So my number 14 is Men. Now my number 13, a late release in 2022, maybe a lot of people haven't seen it, Bones and All. This is the, I think, Guadagnino, I forget his first name, like Luca Guadagnino, who did the Suspiria remake. Bones and All is a little long for a film. It's apparently based off a book. It's got Timothée Chalamet in it, who does a wonderful job. And I have a review of like all these movies, either on my channel or coming to my channel soon. But It's a love story, but it's about two characters who have something horror related very different with them, who meet each other when they're kind of both on these trips across the country. And it really is a love story at the end, but it's very weird because it makes you feel normal about something that's really not normal. So it's kind of scary in that sense. The horror in it is very real. It has some good gore to it, but it looks amazing. The acting is phenomenal, and the writing is very good. And even though it's a longer film, like the pacing is pretty decent. Really, really good film. Really enjoyed it. Bones and all, my number 13 pick. Now my number 12 pick is one that came out in the beginning of the year, which is Fresh. This is a film that had Sebastian Stan in it in a very different role for him. I quite enjoyed the film. It's basically about a girl who ends up being held captive, but it's not so much about that and her trying to escape as it is about a very weird character played by Sebastian Stan. It walks this line of being like scary but also being like a little bit comedic, and Sebastian Stan did a phenomenal job playing that character. Overall, the acting in it is very, very good. It goes to some great horror places. It's weird to say based off the content of it, but it is fun. It's kind of weird to say that it's a fun film because it's pretty messed up at the same time, but that is why my pick for number 12 is Fresh. Now, my number 11 pick, and some people are going to be like, why isn't this higher up on your list? My number 11 pick is Barbarian. I really did enjoy Barbarian. Zach Kreger did a great job in his first horror film, and it's got Justin Long returning to horror in it, which I'm a huge fan of. I like Justin Long. I like him in horror. And it's a very unexpected story. I think they set it up very interestingly where you kind of think the film is going to be one thing, it ends up turning into something different. It has a really great sense of kind of mystery and adventure to it, and it's got some legitimate disturbing stuff that ends up coming up. Great acting in it. The ending isn't my favorite, but I get the point of what it was trying to do, and I like the metaphor that it has at play. I like the metaphor more than the actual execution of it within the film, but it's still really well done. It's still a good time, and the metaphor is powerful when you understand what it is. So anyway, that is why my pick for number 11 is Barbarian. Now for number 10, a film that some people are going to scratch their head and say, why is this on your list? The Australian film Sissy. Now, this film came to Shudder. It was either exclusive or original for them, and it blew my mind in the sense of it did so many things that were daring and could have not worked on their own. Like individual things that if they had been done in the film could easily end up sinking the film and really not work. They did all these things together and it really works. The film has this really odd kind of like upbeat, fun feeling, but it's a slasher at the same time. But there's a lot of other stuff going on. It's basically about a main character who had been picked on a lot when she was young, and she goes away to be with some friends, and then people start dying. I don't want to give you too much if you haven't seen it. I highly recommend it as it's my number 10. Loved it. Fell in love with it. Really good acting. There's some really awesome practical effects and gore in it, too. So that is why, for me, my number 10 pick is Sissy. Now for my number 9 pick, another foreign pick. It is a Senegalese film that came to Shudder called Saloon. This film is phenomenally acted, looks unbelievably stylish and stunning. I would be surprised if the guy who directed it doesn't end up working in Hollywood at some point. It looks that good and polished. Very interesting story about a bunch of mercenaries who get away to a escape location, but then find out that there's something else at play where they're staying. It seems kind of quaint and out of the way and non-sinister until things are kind of sinister. For a lot of the film, it feels like it's not horror at all, but then they chuck in the horror at the end, and it is interesting, it is fun. This film is a very interesting story, very new for someone of a Western culture, and, well, you know, United States culture. And it works. It works extremely well. And it's kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn in the sense that it's kind of like two movies spliced together, but it really works and I really enjoy it. So my number 9 is Saloon. Now number 8, another international title, a Taiwanese film called Incantation. Now this one is on Netflix. It's a found footage film. I don't typically like found footage films, so for me to put it on the list means it's really good. Little overly long in my opinion, but that's kind of what found footage ends up doing. Very interesting film that has legit good scares to it. There are a lot of cool moments where lighting is very low and you're kind of afraid of, what's, in the darkness but still in frame. It's basically about a woman who has some weird things happening with her daughter that she's very concerned about, having to do with kind of demonic stuff. And that's kind of all I want to say about it, but it has really good scares. It's really intense. It's very interesting. From a different culture perspective, it brings a lot of new stuff to the table, and I think it's a very good entry in the found footage subgenre. Excuse me, sorry about that. So my number 8 is Incantation. I believe it's still on Netflix, so you can see it there. Now my number 7, Resurrection. This is another one that came to Shudder. I think it was an exclusive. Tim Roth is in it, but even better than Tim Roth, Rebecca Hall. Rebecca Hall's performances are spellbinding. I cannot take my eyes off of her in this film. Every time she was in a scene, I was like, I know I'm in for something amazing. She brings so much interesting life to her character. Yes, the writing in this is really good. Yes, it looks really good, but it is all about Rebecca Hall and her unbelievable performance. She just had me glued. It's a little bit slow of a film, and I do have, some minor issues with it. And I do think that some stuff at the end that was being used for metaphor, much like Barbarian, didn't really play that well. But the metaphor is very interesting and works well at the same time. But it's a very interesting film. It's, like I said, just the acting is unbelievable. And that's why Resurrection is my number 7. Now getting to number 6, one of the bigger films that came out, Jordan Peele's Nope. I know a lot of people did not like Nope because it's very abstract in a lot of stuff that it's doing. It seems a little too smart for the audience at times, but there are a lot of interesting thematic things going on. I don't think I could even unpack everything going on in the film, to be honest. I do need to watch it a few more times, but it is amazingly visually stunning. The acting in it is phenomenal. The premise is very interesting and cool, and it keeps you glued because you just don't know where the film is going. Yes, I felt a little bit let down by the ending of it. I kind of wanted a little bit more, but the metaphors in the film work extremely well. The subtext works extremely well, and it's just a gorgeous, interesting film. So that is why Jordan Peele's Nope is my number 6. Now coming into number 5, another international title, the Norwegian film The Innocence. This is one like Saloon that came out in another year, but it, I was able to see it this year. It was kind of like a U.S. release this year. The Innocence, brutal. A very, very brutal film. Oh, I didn't give a synopsis of Nope, or Resurrection, but those don't really need it. Just watch them, because those are ones where it's better that you don't know really anything going into the film, so just watch them, I'm just saying. And you can even do the trailers. So number 5 with The Innocence, very brutal. Like I said, it is about children who start hanging out together in a community and figure out that when they're together, they have special powers. And it's really about when people have special powers, how their personalities come forward and how their personalities are kind of shaped based off of the new power that they have, and how that puts them at odds as well. It gets out of control. It gets brutal, like I said. There's some really good practical effects in it. There's some really hard to watch stuff at times, especially because it involves kids, so it's not necessarily for everyone, but it is a really well done film. It looks visually amazing. The child actors did a phenomenal job, and it has great impact in the end. The story is very interesting, so that is why my number 5 pick is The Innocence. Now for my number 4 pick, some people might be surprised by this because it's a film that doesn't have a lot of plot to it, and I'm usually big on plot. Phil Tippett's Mad God. This film is an amazing achievement. Obviously, it was worked on for like 30 years. A lot of people say there's not a lot of story to it, but I can read into it some interesting stuff about, just human existence in general. And visually, it is unfriggin' believable. You can see how much amazing work went into this. It is stop motion. I am a huge fan of stop motion, which is one of the reasons it's so high up. But it was a labor of love by Phil Tippett. Nobody was really paying for this until he got, I think, like some Kickstarter funding towards the end years. to actually finish it out. But what he was doing is kind of using this as therapy for himself whenever he was feeling depressed or anxious, which I can relate to. Went through some of that kind of recently within the past year or so. And you can see him working through things in the film when you know that. And just the ability to take depression, take anxiety, and put that into stop motion animation, something that already looks amazing and is very awe-inspiring, and put that on film is something so special that I'm so glad we got this film, and that's why Mad God is my number 4 film. Now my number 3 film, a no-budget film. A lot of people won't see this coming. A no-budget film that I actually saw last year, in 2021, because the person who wrote and directed it and acts in it contacted me and asked me to watch and review it. Now, whenever that happens, I'm always, happy to oblige for the most part. But expectations are a lot lower because they don't have much of a budget. This film floored me. You can find my review for it. It is called Greywood's Plot. So the reason it's included on here is because it just got its streaming release this year, so that's when most people were able to see it. I saw it because he sent me basically a screener copy. So Greywood's Plot, shot in black and white, extremely stylish. The directing is phenomenal. The acting is so good. The story is very compelling, very weird, very disturbing at times as well, and it takes you so many places you don't expect the film to go. And when you hear that it's a no-budget film, mind blown. Josh Stifter, who had reached out to me to ask me to watch it and review it, is a phenomenal guy. He does an amazing job with this. He has unlimited talent, in my opinion. If he can do this with no budget, what can he do with actual money? I want to see this guy flourish. If you have not seen Greywood's Plot, I forget where it's streaming at the moment. It's on some streaming service, and I can't remember. I don't think it's Tubi, but if someone could check that out and put it in the description which one it's on, check it out for sure. It's amazing. Support independent. Greywood's Plot, my number 3. I don't want to tell you anything about this film because it is a very wild ride that you just need to experience, to be honest. Just watch it. Trust me. Just watch it. My number 2 film is Satan's Slaves Communion. It's an Indonesian film. It's by Joko Anwar. I have yet to see a Joko Anwar film that I dislike. Now, going into this, I had not seen the first Satan's Slaves. I actually still haven't. It's still on my list to get to. But I still enjoyed the sequel, Satan's Slaves Communion, so much that I ranked it so high. It is phenomenal. When it comes to style, when it comes to cinematography and directing, Joko Anwar is phenomenal. Not only that, but his ability to use lighting very effectively is amazing. He builds atmosphere like nobody's business. I feel scared when I watch his films, and that doesn't happen all that often. He used in this film it's basically about a abandoned-ish apartment complex that in real life is abandoned, that looks scary on its own, is lit in a way that makes it even more scary, much like I was saying in, I think it was the Barbarian review, or no, Incantation review, that seeing things in frame that are just totally in the dark, you're afraid of what's in that darkness. And he does such a good job with that it keeps you on edge for the entire film. Like I said, a lot of interesting shot angles, a lot of interesting shot framing. The acting is really good. The story is very compelling. There are legit good jump scares in the film. I'm not going to tell you too much about the actual story, but definitely just watch the film. It is phenomenal. And especially if you've seen the first Satan's Slaves, which I told you I will eventually get to. I will. So that's why my pick for number 2 is Satan's Slaves Communion, the Indonesian film by Joko Anwar. Now that brings me to number 1, and if people remember what I said in the beginning, you know what my number 1 is. It is The Menu. So glad I waited to see this, to do this list. It is a phenomenal film, and you can check out my full no-spoiler review this coming weekend when I'm putting this video out. It is a ride. It is a ride. The acting in it is unbelievable. You have Ralph Fiennes being the most interesting character in the film, but Anya Taylor-Joy is in it. And other than them, everyone else does an amazing job, but those two really stand out for obvious reasons. When you watch the film, it is beyond beautiful. It is focused on food. It's literally about a bunch of rich people who go to a secluded island in order to enjoy a very expensive, exclusive meal done by this top chef who sources everything from the island, and he's very eccentric and kind of out there in his philosophies. And there's a horror element, and that's all I'm going to tell you. I don't want it to go too far. But the way they make food look in this and how deep they get into like fine dining and the terminology and the concepts and how they use that to say so much more in the film and how they do their subtextual and thematic stuff without saying what it is works amazingly well. It brings some things to the forefront that reflect the ills of society going on right now and have been going on for a long time and seem will never be fixed in such an outstanding way. And even though it's like an hour and 47 minutes with credits, it moves at a really good pace. And even when it's not moving super fast, you're just glued to the visuals, you are glued to the acting, and it's got this great thriller aspect that just keeps you wanting to know where it's going because you truly just don't know where it's going. So that is why, for me, my number one horror film of 2022 is The Menu. Anyway, would love to hear your thoughts on my list. Like I said, this is just, my personal list. Would love to hear yours. Put it in the comments. Or if you want to comment on any of these films, or if there are any of these films you haven't seen, I highly recommend you to do that. And if you do, come back here and let me know that you saw it and what your thoughts are on those films. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate that. Also hit the notification bell button because then you know when I'm putting up new videos. And until next time, I always do this. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.